Hey friends, Irene Lyon here. Welcome to this video, to this YouTube channel, and to this world of healing trauma, nervous system health, and all things neuroplasticity. First of all, thank you for being here. If you are brand new, thank you for showing up, pressing play and learning. If you've been here for a while, thank you for continuing to press play and learn, even though these might start to become review over time. I like to review a lot and blend things in. But for the newbies here, know that there is so much information that you can learn through me. This is one way to do it on YouTube, but head to my site if you haven't yet already. I've got many resources, more articles, videos, online courses, and education is so important, and that's why I put out these videos each week. And we have to practice, and the practice element happens over on my site. So if you want to get into this work after you've listened to this video, please be sure to do that. We need to practice as well as get educated. So today I was inspired to create this video. We'll see how short or long it is. I just was interviewed by a colleague of mine for an online summit, and I used an example that I've used a little bit in the past, but I wanted to put it out here for you today on the YouTube. And we talked about the importance, at least in our work, in my work, working with the somatic systems, the nervous system, healing trauma and neuroplasticity, the importance of not just treating the signs and symptoms that someone has. And so the classic definition of sign and symptom, that comes really from the medical world. I am not a doctor, but of course I've learned about this through all my years of training in science and wellness and human physiology. It would be something that we can see, something that's popping up, like a skin rash or a stomach ache or heart palpitations, whatever. We can say, yes, there's a symptom, there's a sign, we can see it, we can measure it, we can test it, something's wrong. And sometimes we need to treat those things. One example would be, let's just say you got a bite, a spider bite, and for whatever reason, it got infected. You're gonna want to treat that thing, right? Clean it, put maybe some antibiotic cream or whatever you use to fight bacteria. If it got out of hand, you might need to go to the doctor, take some antibiotics. It might need to get lanced, not to be descriptive, but we might need to treat that actual thing, right? So there is a time and a place for treating the sign, the symptom, the trouble that we can see, feel, and there really might be something there that needs fixing. Now, in the world of nervous system health and healing, and many people watching this video and many of my clients and students will say, I've got all these signs and symptoms, these anxieties, these tightnesses in my body, these pains in my gut, my digestion is all off, my immune system is all off, I have this pain that just won't go away, all these mysterious things that don't make sense, things that get inflamed for no reason. So there's just this bucket list of all these things that people will have, and they'll come and they'll say, I've gone through every test. There's nothing wrong, there's no tumor, there's no funny things, all my vitamin levels are good, I've cleaned up my diet, I've done as much as I can to relieve my stress, and I still have this thing. And so I'm going to use an example, I'm going to talk about digestion, for example. So let's just say, again, hypothetically, this is the example I gave when I was talking to my colleague earlier today. We have 5 people, and those 5 people have the exact same complaint. Let's say they all have chronic diarrhea and constipation, what we might call irritable bowel or IBS. We could even say Crohn's fits into this, but let's just say trouble with the digestion where it ain't working properly. Things are flowing and then they stop and then they go too fast and then they don't flow for 5 days. And it's this chronic cycling of just intense stuff that's not nice. Okay, so we've got these 5 people. In a classic situation, we would, assess it, maybe look at the gut, see if there's something wrong, if there's something inside of it that's not right. We might look at allergies, food, etc. But like I said, let's just say all that is taken care of and they're sent home saying, we don't know what's wrong, manage your stress, see, what it might be, get some exercise in, move, use your mind. Physicians don't know what's going on when they've tried all the tests and everything's been ruled out. So let's just say. And what I know through studying my work, especially the work I've studied through Dr. Peter Levine, the founder of Somatic Experiencing, when it gets to this point and there's no reason, it's often what is called dysregulation in the nervous system. That means the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system are at odds with each other. One is trying to fight, flee, and the other is trying to freeze and shut down. I've done other videos on this, so I'm going to post those below. I don't want to go through all the mechanics, but to make it simple, let's just say we have tons of trapped old survival stress in our body, what I would call what I've learned to call survival energy. Many people would call this trapped trauma in the system from many different things, and I'm going to go through those in a second. If we have trapped stress, survival stress specifically, old traumatic stress, this fight, flight, freeze energy in our bodies, running our show, the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system is going to be in chaos. It's going to have a lack of flow. It's going to be working in kind of these disjointed ways. And the best way I can describe it, or I'll describe it right now, is if you've ever gone to the symphony where the orchestra plays and you've got all these different instruments and groups of people, brass, string, percussion, I'm sure I'm missing other ones, but they're all there. They all have their job to make the beautiful sounds of classical music. And then you have the conductor. And that person is ensuring that the various sections go on at the right time. They do that with their hands and they're using their face. It's very engaging. It's bringing into play actually one of our parts of our nervous system called the ventral vagal portion of the parasympathetic. That gives us that ability to make faces and nest now and this and right? If you've ever watched a good conductor, they are so animated, and they have to be animated to command the orchestra, and then they create beautiful music. At the beginning, before the conductor gets there, there's all this crazy sound because they're practicing, they're tuning up their instruments, and it's just this chaos. So if we think about the nervous system, when the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, is trapped in what we would call this survival stress due to old past stuff, not acute stress that happens on the day of, but old stuff that's old. It's like the beginning before the conductor is there. There's no rhyme or reason. Whereas a healthy nervous system, a healthy autonomic nervous system has this conduction, it has this flow, it's orchestrated, things go off at the right time when they're supposed to. So now if we think about one of our human systems that is probably one of the best examples, the digestive system. Often we just think the belly and the stomach, but it starts at the mouth. It starts when we start to salivate, we smell, we see, we even think about food, and it actually starts the process. Juices get released, we sip a glass of water, we eat some food, things go down. We essentially want things to just go down, of course, around in the gut, absorbs the food, the nutrients, the nutrition, we absorb water in the colon, juices get released so that things break down, proteins, fats, carbohydrates, sugars, all of it. It's this crazy orchestration of physiology that is so amazing when you really study it. And we want it to go in one way. We want it to go flow down. But when we have this fight, flight, freeze, when we have chaos in the nervous system, it doesn't always work that way. And so things go the opposite way. That's why we would call it, that's what we would call, say, gastric reflux. Or GERDs or heartburn, is the stomach acid going the opposite way into the food tube. We feel it in the heart because our esophagus is there. It hurts, it burns, it literally destroys the tissue, right? That's a very common symptom, sign in our Western world, and it gets treated with antacids, which might take the edge off, but it's not getting to the root of why that's happening. And so going back to this concept of the symphony, flow, and how that relates to our nervous system. And then I'm specifically targeting and piecing out this one system, which is the GI system, the digestive system. Okay, there's a few pieces to this. Now, go back to those 5 people. They all have this trouble with their digestion. Let's just say they all have that heartburny quality, or they have more severe things like chronic diarrhea or constipation, IBS kind of thing going on, and there's just this irritation. There's flow, but it's too fast, and then it stops for 5 days and nothing comes out. That is that orchestra, that symphony in chaos. It doesn't know when to release, when to stop. It's just going like this. So again, Peter Levine, founder of SE, he realized that a lot of these chronic problems, he would call them syndromes, like gut trouble, like immune system troubles, autoimmune, chronic levels of anxiety, depression, circulation. It comes down to this chaotic cycling that isn't in order. Things are disordered, things are disorganized, there's chaos as opposed to flow. Now, the reason I wanted to bring up these 5 people, let's just say that all those people have the same sign and symptom. And let's just say they've been checked by their doctors. There's nothing wrong that can be found and seen, but there's definitely something not right. All those people could have very different histories of how they were put into fight, flight, freeze. And again, this kind of, for those of us new, it's like a mind twist. It's like a 180-degree twist, because someone may have had, let's say, a shock trauma. Maybe they grew up and they were a gymnast and they constantly fell and hurt themselves and they never recovered. They never were allowed to feel the pain of the injury, and the system gets trapped in fight, flight, freeze. One person maybe had birth trauma. This is a real thing. You come out of the birth canal and let's say things weren't great. Maybe your heart stopped. Maybe you needed to be treated. Maybe you got yanked out with forceps. That is a huge shock to the autonomic nervous system, and the system can go into a shutdown response and not come out of it, or come out of it but stay a little sort of functionally frozen. Someone else may have been brought up in a very abusive, physically, sexually abusive environment where they are fearing for their life all the time, and they are being literally, like, physically, sexually abused by people in their world. That is going to also put a person into fight, flight, freeze, and definitely freeze if they're in that for a long time. Another person, maybe they grew up in a war-torn country where there's bombs going off, and like it's absolutely frightening to even leave your house because you might get killed, and everyone in the household is on edge. That is going to put an intense amount of stress and strain on a little person's physiology. And again, this stuff doesn't heal with time. It stays, it festers, it impacts the system. So those are just some examples, all these different ways that we can have trauma get trapped, the survival stress in our system. Another example, I think this will round out 5. Let's just say we are brought up in an environment that was very high expectation. So I would classify these as micro traumas. I've talked about these in the past, where we are ridiculed if we don't perform, where there are conditions to being loved, where we aren't allowed to be silly and free, and we're sent to our room if we cry or we show a little bit of anger or we're not perfect. That is also very stressful on a person, especially little people, and they will trap their fight, flight, freeze. Because again, they can't, well, most of them don't. They're not going to punch mom or dad. They're probably not going to run away. And they know that they have to just live with this because this is how their family system is. So we readjust and we shut down. So 5 scenarios, different kinds of traumatic events: shock, early birth, environmental, like I said, growing up in war-torn country, these micro traumas. So they're all different, but the nervous system doesn't know the differences. All it knows is danger, danger, danger. Something's not right. I better go into protection mode. Bring out the fight, flight, freeze, needs, and let's just hunker down and hope that this ends. Now, of course, let's just say it does end. We're not living in those environments anymore. We're adults, but now we're like, Jesus, I've got this symptom, this sign, this chronic problem with my gut. Know that that can be the cause of that physical symptom, that physical sign, that ailment. Even if it was verbal and emotional abuse and we were never touched, our gut was never touched, nothing was poked at us, we were never harmed with a car accident or a shock trauma or bombs coming at our head, we can still get a physical ailment from emotional and verbal abuse. Or that example, the fifth example, high expectations, always needing to be on and perfect. So wanted to talk about this because a common question I get is, but Irene, I've got this gut thing, I've got this physical ailment, but I've never had physical trauma. And my answer is, yes, that's okay, because the nervous system doesn't know the difference between physical trauma, emotional trauma, or abuse, emotional abuse, neglect, high expectations, war. It just knows I'm in danger, something's not right, I better protect, I better shut down, I better hunker down. And when the system lacks that flow, when we are in fight, flight, freeze for a long period of time, we lose the flow in the body. The system can't regenerate. The gut, in this example, it can't flow properly. It's like that symphony that's chaotic and nothing is sounding right. Of course, when it's in our gut, it causes pain. It causes bloating. It causes irritation, because the gut also produces a lot of our important feel-good chemicals that go up to our brain, right? It's a huge, huge part of our system. Some call it the first brain. Kiddos feel everything in their gut, A child who doesn't like their teacher usually doesn't say, I don't like my teacher. They say, I have a tummy ache, I don't want to go to school, right? We feel so much in our gut. And so it's a high zone, it's a high traffic area for feeling stress and these old traumatic events. But what's happening is the autonomic nervous system that governs the fight, flight, freeze responses, that autonomic nervous system is also responsible for keeping the conduction and the flow in our physiology. And one of those parts is our gut, our GI tract, our digestive system. So I hope this little bit of a tour through these analogies, this concept of 5 people that all have the same trouble but all have different trauma histories, how they can have the same thing because the nervous system doesn't know the difference. All it knows is fear, shutdown, fight, flight, and it wants to get out of it. So what we want as human beings, if we're struggling with these kind of ailments, we want to get that flow back. We need to reteach our system how to be that conductor that knows how to execute and how to command and get that system flowing in good harmony with just that beautiful synchronicity between the parasympathetic and the sympathetic systems. We want that good flow. And so to end, I will say, if you are, again, new here and you haven't checked out more of my resources, please do so. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Be sure to learn a little bit more about the branches of the nervous system. I'll post a few videos below, namely what the polyvagal theory is, and also the importance of learning how to be with our bodies, our somatic selves, and the importance of regulation. So again, extra homework after this one, but hopefully this has given another perspective for those who've been around here for a little while on how, 5 different people, same ailment, can have the same trouble, but from differing causes. And at the end of the day, we want to work to heal the nervous system. Work to heal that system that is sending off signals that are putting chaos into the system. We want to reverse engineer that and bring back the opposite of chaos, which is flow and really health and freedom. Thank you so much for listening to this video. Thank you for being here, and we will see you next time.